Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Woo! Hello. I love that kind of entrance, especially since it's 8:30 in the morning. So sorry for dragging you all down here. I've heard mixed reactions to my timing this morning. Firstly, I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are on the Wurundjeri lands of the Wurundjeri lands of the people of the Kulin Nation. I would like to say that it always was and always will be Aboriginal land and that sovereignty was never ceded. I would like to extend my warmest welcomes to any First Nations people joining us here today. If you weren't here yesterday, or you've missed some GCAPs, or you're just wondering why there's a spooky person on stage, my name is Sav Wolf, and I am the Manager of Events, Content, Diversity, Equality and Inclusion for IGEA. I am also one of the event coordinators and the content manager for GCAP. We had an absolutely amazing first day yesterday. It's been so incredible to see so many of you in person again, seeing the conversations happening, a lot of pointing across the room at other people and being like, you again. It's been incredible seeing you all come together after so long apart, so thank you so much for coming down. I'm going to try and keep myself as short as possible today to let you continue with the phenomenal content that we're about to witness across today, which opens up the day to mid to advanced level talks across a variety of topics and tracks. Make sure to check out the sponsor booths today, the bespoke content rooms, the local lounges, and of course, the free coffee cart again. This year's GCAP wouldn't be possible without the help of our sponsors, so a huge thank you to Amazon Web Services, Big Ant Studios, Blowfish, Cam Rogers Legal, Creative Victoria, EA Fire Monkeys, Epic Games, Gameloft, Hipster Whale, Keywords Studio, LDB, League of Geeks, Nintendo, Playside Studios, Procreate, Screen New South Wales, Screen Queensland, Screen West, we have a lot of screens, Sledgehammer, South Australia Film Corporation, Space Draft, Vic Screen, as well as to our industry partner Screen Australia, who helped us out with the local lounge today. So if you go in there, please play some demos, enjoy some talks from the amazing Screen Australia people. Thank you to all of our sponsors for your generous support and for letting us bring you this jam-packed conference. If you were here yesterday, or if you know me from my kitchen from the past 2 years, you know it's time for my favourite subject, which is housekeeping. If you heard this yesterday, please laugh at the same spots. It's really, really good for my ego. To cover off some important topics first, in the case of any emergency, be that medical, fire, or other, please notify an IGEA staff member immediately, and we will escalate. In the event of an emergency, one of 2 alarms will sound. If it's just a beep, like your alarm clock, that's an alert, so remain calm and await further instructions from MCEC. If it's a whoop whoop, like a juggalo, that's the sign. Thank you, everyone. That's the sign to evacuate immediately. MCEC wardens will direct you to the safest evacuation point and let you know when it is safe to return. If an IGEA team member is not available immediately, please contact one of our many volunteers who you'll spot in the blue GCAP shirts. Since we're also, kind of new to this and it's been a little while, let's cover off some expected behaviour as well. There's a totally new world to navigate of masks and social distancing at conferences. We've provided you all with masks and sanitizers free of charge and can replace them if you need at the Rego desk. IGEA strongly recommends the use of masks when you cannot socially distance. As a common courtesy to other attendees, we'd love it if when you approached a group of people to talk with, or some new people that you haven't met before, you go, hi, I'm Sav Wolf, you put your own name in there, would you like me to wear a mask for you? Would you be more comfortable with that? We all want to keep each other safe, so if you would all feel sick over the course of the event and can therefore no longer attend, please contact the IGEA team to organise refunds to ensure that you're not missing out. Please be considerate of your fellow attendees and let's work to be as safe as we possibly can this Melbourne International Games Week, as I'm sure we'd all like to get to Sunday without getting sick. Also, when you signed up via Eventbrite, which we all had to, you agreed to our privacy policy and codes of conduct. And since this year I didn't want to let you skip over it like a terms and conditions page, I've actually printed it onto the back of your passes this year. It includes a helpful QR code to help you go to the full code of conduct on our website. To stop you from reading it all while I'm talking, you can read it afterwards. I'm sure it's very, very interesting for you. Let me summarise some important points because it's a requirement of entry that you abide by our code of conduct. GCAP is a business-to-business conference, which is a B2B, which means we're expecting you to act as if you're at work, aka in a business. And since we're all, again, kind of new to this again, it's been a while since we're used to socially interacting with people, but that is no excuse for unacceptable behaviour. You can probably guess what unacceptable behaviour is, but just in case, unacceptable behaviour includes physical, written, verbal, or other abuse, including intimidation, threats, annoyance, and stalking. Any boisterous, lewd, or offensive behaviour or language, continued disturbances and disruptions in person and digital spaces, the use of physical force, any behaviour which creates apprehension in another person, possession of any item that can be used as a weapon which may cause dangers to others, failure to obey any rules or regulations of any venues, including digital spaces, sending sexually explicit messages or images via direct message. All of these will be taken extremely seriously, be they against other attendees, organisers, speakers, or moderators. It will result in immediate action that the IGEA team deem appropriate, including expulsion from the conference without warning or refund. Basically, if you have to question if something is unacceptable behaviour before you do it, don't do it. It probably is. We've got a zero tolerance policy and safety is always the highest priority here. For all code of conduct violations, myself and Raylene Knowles, who you would have seen yesterday afternoon, are your main points of contact. If you witness any unacceptable behaviour, a dangerous situation, or a person in distress, you can tell either Raylene or myself via our numbers on our website, contact a volunteer to come get us, or grab us directly if we're within eyesight. Whatever method you are most comfortable with, and we'll be along to address it ASAP. Please know that anything conveyed to us will be treated in the strictest of confidence, and we are here for support and guidance as you require, if you require. Your safety and comfort within our event is our top priority, and we will work to make sure that we can resolve the issue in a timely manner for you. If you do have any questions, Raylene, myself, and the IGEA team will be floating around during the conference, so please feel free to get in contact if you need us for any reason at all. We'll be very happy to talk to you. So welcome back to GCAP. If this is your first day, welcome back. If this is your second day, thank you for coming yesterday and welcome back once more. I'm thrilled to announce our next keynote, Xalavier Nelson Jr. Xalavier, is a BAFTA-nominated studio head, narrative director, and writer with dozens of titles under his belt, including Reigns Beyond, Hypnospace Outlaw, An Airport for Aliens Currently Run by Dogs, Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, and El Paso Elsewhere. He also makes strides in a burgeoning storytelling career outside of games, with releases such as the cult hit Sherlock Holmes Hunts the Mothman. Please welcome him to the stage.
I asked if I could go anywhere on the stage and escape the camera. And they said the answer was yes, so expect a lot of that just popping up randomly whenever the anxiety builds up. My name is Xalavier Nelson Jr. I want to begin by acknowledging that this conference is taking place on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, of the Kulin Nations, and that they are the definitive traditional owners of this land. I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as to the Aboriginal elders of any other First Nations communities that might be here today. I want to thank GCAP for having me here. It's an honor and a pleasure. I want to thank the City of Melbourne and its people for their hospitality, and I want to thank all of you for being here at 8:30 a.m. And we aren't going to thank anyone who came in after I said that. Screw those guys. Y'all the real ones. Without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. My name is Xalavier Nelson Jr. I've done a lot of stuff in a relatively short amount of time, and it's given me a unique perspective. I've worked on over 60 games in the past 7 years at nearly every level of seniority in a bunch of roles, including producer, writer, designer, audio engineer at one point, and all the way up to director. One of those got nominated for a BAFTA, which is very cool. In a former life before that, I was a games journalist, where among other things, I was a columnist for PC Gamer magazine for 2 years. I have work in print and RPGs and board games, including an RPG system I made at one point called Ellipses, because I was tired of spending 3 hours to build a character that I would adventure with for like 6 hours, and then because we're all adults with schedules and jobs, we would never sync up again, and so that character was just gone, wasted, left in the aether. I write comics. I've had the fortune to go around the world doing weird games and running talks and workshops and having the opportunity to interact with a community of creativity that now GCAP is a part of, and that I am, again, honored to bring into this overall collection of perspectives. Having, especially in the past few years, moved into a passion that I discovered for production and biz dev, the process and the practical elements of how we bring our worlds to life, combined with a very wide variety of experience, I have come to an inescapable conclusion that is probably not going to be news to anyone here. Shit's fucked, y'all. It's bad. I'm not going to belabor this point too much, but I think if we're going to speak honestly about collaboration structures as they currently exist and where they can and arguably should go from here, we have to establish the conditions and structures, the systemic issues that are currently facing not just our industry, but our medium. We are losing entry points as more risk is added to less projects, longer timelines, bigger budgets. If you're a student coming out of uni, you aren't going to get $10 million for a game. That's an entry point gone. If a $10 million game or a $30 million studio gets added, they need senior and direction level staff. The space for a junior to join that team might be years from then, if it ever comes at all. Another entry point lost. We're running coding camps and DEI initiatives and putting well-meaning people in the place to operate those organizations, as well as pumping resources into them. And when those people emerge, the creators of tomorrow, they have nowhere to go. And on top of that, the talent that we do have, that is currently here, we're still looking at an average career length of 3 to 5 years. Coincidentally, the same amount of time it usually takes to ship a game. Our talent pool is running dry, and the survivors that manage to emerge from this toxic miasma, there's a trickle of them, just enough, shining just brightly enough to convince us that maybe we aren't deeply broken. And the fact that the seniors and mid-level developers we need today, that we didn't build them up 5 years ago. It's easy to underlook until you're recruiting and realize that perhaps the people you started with, that if you look left and right and remember GCAP's past, that you sat with and learned with, they're gone. As projects gain new capabilities to interact with their communities, to build more ambitious things with smaller teams, with unprecedented opportunities today, and also have a life for a title that extends beyond the initial launch point for the game, we're also fundamentally losing mobility. All of the games and ideas and passions and design concepts that could be explored by a team or an individual that is bound to, say you release an indie game and it does really well and you support it for the next 8 years. That means you've got a cash cow. You're undeniably in a positive place, but your ability to operate flexibly, your ability to say anything else and put it into the world is critically limited, and there are dozens of systemic factors incentivizing you to stay right where you are, especially if in an unreliable commercial environment you find a pocket of reliability. In summation, the shit is fucked. We can talk about The fact that we're losing our history, and that despite the fact that through emulation and spicy websites, you still have access to ROMs and so on, that our designers and creators of tomorrow don't have access to a wide piece of our medium and its history. People born after 9/11 who I'm now hiring, and they spring this fact on me like a jump scare. They can't play a game past the PS4 generation often, especially if it's niche or obscure or didn't get some sort of remake, or it's tied up in licensing concerns. And that loss of history, on top of the loss of people to discuss that history with the bleeding of talent from the medium, is felt. And to top it all off, our audience does not have the foundation to feel empathy for the people who build the worlds that they love, because they don't fundamentally know how games get made. If I say the word CGI, whether you know CGI or don't, whether you're super familiar with movie making or not, you can say, oh yeah, that's when like a big orc army appears on the screen. What does forward rendering mean? I've been in the medium for 13 years and I do not know. I've directed multiple games and it scares me. So it's no wonder that our audience fixates on frame rates and resolution. It's not out of malice. It's because it's the one term they have to understand the quality of the worlds and the efforts that's being put into the games produced. And as much as shit is fucked, I'm here to say we do have hope. This talk is entitled Voltrons Will Save Us, Flexible Collaboration Structures in the Information Age. And the reason why is because I do believe in this environment, with the current capabilities that we have, now more than ever, we have the ability to not just save ourselves, but to save each other consistently, sustainably, over and over again for as long as it takes. For those who are not familiar with Voltron, it is a giant robot created when 5 rad teens get into robot lions and then combine to form a giant robot warrior. Like the best 80s TV shows, it was a fantastic branching off point for all kinds of future creativity, as well as the most expensive possible advertisement for a toy that you could make. And honestly, if you take anything from this specific slide, it's just the idea that Voltrons is this idea of modularly connecting to accomplish a goal greater than ourselves, specifically to give money to the Hasbro Corporation. Now, what is the information age? The information age is a term I would read a lot in books growing up, especially if they're older books and not super well-funded libraries, about the time that we live in right now, an age of miracles when the knowledge of the past and present is at our fingertips. We are more connected than ever. And all of human experience, in quotes, but all of human experience and every boob that has ever existed would be projected across the world at the speed of light. And they were right. This wasn't a crackpot prediction. We live in that time right now. We've had to invent new types of boobs to get horny for. That's how far it's gone. And this even ties into things like class consciousness. There's articles and studies about the fact that one of the greatest obstacles to social change and mobilization today is that it's hard to feel poor when you've got a box that can do anything in your pocket. The information age speaks to an industry with more opportunities than ever. I painted a somewhat dire picture earlier and said the terms shit's fucked more times than my mother would like. And even with that context, look at the technology we have available and what we can produce with it. Better games, faster, cheaper, hopefully healthier for the people who build them. More connection to our audience. More ability to build empathy and experiences that we've never seen before. And given this environment, it is odd that the way we produce games, the fundamental structures that we impose upon our creative processes, looks pretty similar to ages past. We're a young medium when it comes to confronting a history of diversity, lack of diversity, harassment, racism, sexism, failures of process and professionalism. Give us time. We're a young medium. We're just a little guy. Until it comes time to discuss a publishing contract, alternative studio structures, new production methodologies, and suddenly this supposedly young medium knows what it's doing. There is a contradiction here, fundamentally. And given the fact that with $100, you can be on Steam and touch the entire world, potentially, a game named Trombone Champ is kicking the asses of games with budgets in the millions right now. Yes, it's unlikely that you'll make as much money as GTA 5, but the fact that you exist there, that there is a surprising lack of gatekeepers, that there is an incredible amount of opportunity to collaborate with people around the world and find new ways to do it. It's odd that the conversation is stopping at like how amazing remote work is. I don't want to understate how important remote work is, or the 4-day work week and all the other innovations that are occurring, but the fact that that's about as far as the conversation has gone, that we, with the knowledge of the world of our fingertips, believe that we have all of the answers, is again a broken premise. I'm going to do something that's pretty terrifying for me today, which is that I am going to discuss how and why my studio, Strange Scaffold, exists. How do I do what I do? How do I make more than 60 games in 7 years, a lot of them not ones I've directed, and then at our own studio, we've released 5 projects in the past 3.5 years. Minimal crunch, minimal resources. We've got another 9 in development. How does that happen? I'm terrified not because I'm thinking someone's going to steal it. Please steal it. Make my games so I don't have to. If you find anything that could enable your practical processes and your creative processes as you make your games in this talk, steal it wholesale, run with it. Find dead ends and find better paths forward. I'm terrified because the fear lives in the back of my head that if I finally unveil how I do what I do, people will see it exposed to plain words in the harsh sunlight of day and be like, ooh, actually, that's not good. I don't like that. And that I won't get to do this anymore. Or that even worse, I'll be alone. There is an odd feeling that comes from having a crowd lined up in front of you, waiting to shake your hand, tell you how powerful and important the work you're doing is. And about halfway through the line, you realize no one's changing their position. You're standing alone. There's no check, there's no support. You're doing powerful, important work. And in that pursuit, you're not quite powerful and important enough to support, not quite powerful and important enough to inspire change. It's just a little bit too weird. I'm seeing people in this audience who have felt that horrible loneliness, that yawning, smiling loneliness. And this talk is for you. And if this talk ends up only being for you, it will still have been a talk worth giving. I am a product of the information age. I got to get my start in game journalism by lying. I was 12 years old. I found out that game journalists get games for free. And I said, that's the perfect job. That's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Free video games. I don't know what it says about our medium that it worked, but I've been here ever since. And in the process, I got sent like a $2,000 laptop, which is weird. I had to send it back, but that's a weird thing for a 12-year-old to have. It's like giving a baby a gun. But also, as time passed, I got to see and feel the 3 to 5 year cycle viscerally, combined with the inexperience of age, looking around and realizing that peers and mentors were dropping like flies, Twitter accounts for promising games and like previews that you'd write. And the games would never come out. The people would just drop off the face of the earth and you would never know what happened to them. I was coming towards adulthood and I was scared. So I said I would make a game before putting a close on that chapter of my life. And I pitched to AlterConf, a conference, a series that's sadly gone now, I think. This is me at 17 in 2016. A talk titled, Why I No Longer Identify as a Games Journalist. The problem is, after I pitched this talk and wrote it and made this game in about 13 days called All Hail the Spider God, my very first game in Twine, people liked it. And worse, I loved it. I loved the process of bringing worlds to life and connecting with players and connecting with the development community on a personal level. I was hooked. And so my talk became one of why I was leaving to why I was staying here and had hope for a better future. I turned 18, and my dad, I've been fortunate to have supportive parents, enlisted military. We didn't know that we were growing up poor. Always had a roof over our head. He said, I've started a bank account for you. Here's the details. I put 1,000 into checking, 1,000 into savings. If you want to pursue this gaming thing, this is your chance. And the first thing I did, I'll be honest, it was buy a lot of Steam games on sale. But after that, with this opportunity, I chased every contract and freelance pitch that I could. I wanted to be able to work in any genre, to do this trust and sacrifice justice, and learn everything about every sector of the industry possible, both for my own edification as well as to pass that information on to others. Fast forward 3 years later, I had turned $2,000 into $40,000, and that felt really big and weird. And in the process, as I learned more about how game development was traditionally done, I was asking questions. I said, you can get on Steam for $100, the asset store exists. These obviously aren't shortcuts to expansive quality creativity. They're tools. But why aren't people asking what the $100 game looks like, the $1,000 game, the $10,000 game? If you scope with something focused and know what you're building and how you're building it, can't you take advantage of that environment? And games are also built on code bases. We're one of the few mediums, the only medium, where you can, inside of the exact same code base, produce an entirely different game, even sometimes with the exact same assets. Is that possible? Is that a thing that I can do? And I was given a supportive, no, that's crazy. This is how much a game costs. You take a bad deal with a publisher for $250,000 to make a game that actually costs $400,000 to make, and then you come out and you're a success, and you're a big enough success that you can get a good publishing deal next time, and if it doesn't go that way, don't think about it. Don't think about it. That's bad. That's a bad outcome. You're going to make it. You make this thing for 4 years, and it's the one thing you make, and that's the way games are made. At this point, I'd become known as a fixer, having experienced as many production environments as I had. I think I was at over 40 games at this point. And I had gotten cynical. I wanted to make sure that no one around me burnt out, but I didn't care if I had to burn in the process to do it. If the game comes out, and if the game exists, then I exist. And if I break in the process, at least I made something happen while doing it. I approached creativity with a feverish urgency. that also robbed me of joy. I'm smiling in this picture, and I did not realize just how much hair the pandemic robbed me of. But one of the principal things I remember is outside of photos not smiling as someone in their early 20s. Then NYU Game Center reached out to a college dropout and said, hey, we do this thing called No Quarter every year, where we invite the 4 most exciting indie developers that we've been seeing and know to do something interesting. We give you $5,000, you go away, just come back with something in October that is interesting. And I said yes, despite already being pretty burnt out, and ended up meeting a man named Tom Vanita, who taught me how to use Unity. And we started to build the beginnings of what became an airport for aliens currently run by dogs, my first big title that I personally directed and shepherded through the entirety of development as the creative director for. The autonomy was intoxicating. And the game we were making, because it was set in a universe, it's an open world comedy adventure game set in a universe of airports run by stock photo dogs, I had to constantly ask, what does a perfect world look like? A world that believes that you matter just because you exist in it. The mandate I took from it is that it was a game I had to become a better person to build. I'd be writing a conversation between a dog and a human. It's a weird game. And I'd be like, I guess I do have a fear of intimacy. And then I'd have to go away and deal with that for a couple of days to come back and finish the scene. That's what I saw as the development process of the game, and that changed me. And I started to say, okay, maybe this is possible. Maybe I can do this. And I started to quietly, as we continue development with the game, spin up other teams in something that I called the Constellation Model to figure out how we can make games better, faster, cheaper, and healthier, a statement which has become the motto of our studio. Strange Scaffold fundamentally operates as a hub and spoke organization. So the idea of the Constellation Model is that you're surrounded by a cloud of stars, incredible people. And for each project, you modularly, to fit the vision of the game, the budget that you have, the timeline that you want to operate upon, you connect the stars in a way that makes sense. And if one of those stars deals with a sudden event or a loss of capacity or flexibility, you work around them to either connect a different star in the constellation or to ensure that the dev environment and project you're building is flexible enough to operate around their individual needs. I think about a project for years, knowing I don't have the cash necessarily to prototype. I have to get it right the first time. The one place of arrogance I will allow myself, the superpower that I believe I have gained, is I identify exactly what a game needs and what it needs to look like before it comes into development. We iterate within those lines, but setting those lines is something I will do for years by myself, and I'll bring a pitch to a programmer and an artist saying, this is what I think we should build. Is it possible? Is it feasible? Would it be good for the team? Would it be a joyful process? And we build more and more team members as we prove out those assumptions step by step by step. The term strange scaffold comes from the fact that I wanted to build weird idiosyncratic things and do it in a way that made it possible for the people within that structure to not be risking their lives on a game called An Airport for Aliens currently run by dogs. If you need a game called Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator to pay your mortgage, something has gone critically wrong. And beneath that, I live in America, where a full-time employee and healthcare is a very expensive proposition. I never wanted someone to lose the ability to take care of their kids because they chose to go with me on a creative journey. So as a studio, we explicitly attempt to recruit different kinds of people in different kinds of situations. Say, we want to give you an environment to do the most interesting, flexible work, fairly compensated, that you can do at a given moment. Working individually around your needs, your schedule, and your perspective. You are valued. And I spun up more teams. I did contracting, I did biz dev to support this. One game became 2, became 4, and I realized I was starting to hit a wall. I was trying to approach my creative practice and my production practice as one and the same, as an intersection, as with business as art. And I could see I would start to lose things between the cracks as a producer and a director and a writer and a designer, and I'm skipping all over the place and I'm compartmentalizing because I have undiagnosed ADHD, and I didn't want to, for lack of a better term, fail my teams because a key design document didn't come in because my attention was elsewhere. I started looking for a producer, and a woman named Meredith Hall saved me. And then we found another producer, Kawatiano, and we found a marketing guy, Hunter Bond, and this infrastructure team started to grow. So this hub and spoke structure where I'm directly managing and interacting with teams on a daily basis to make idiosyncratic, focused things strange in a reasonable way. Strange refers to strange things. Scaffold refers to a reasonable structure, logical beneath it. Suddenly, not only did that become more sustainable, not only did my capacity grow, but for the first time, we started to compartmentalize, to detach, to combine the team chats and open the doors of transparency even within our own organization. Say, here's everyone looking for games to be built in a fundamentally different way. And I found with surprise and shock and horror that I was working with 40 people on a daily basis. I thought it was like at most 25. Meredith, Kawa, Hunter, our other infrastructure people who have come since. They helped me keep it going and ensure that in the process of trying to do things differently, I didn't destroy myself in the process. We have unique strengths and weaknesses as an organization because of this single-minded focus, this sort of top-down but expressive framework, saying, hey, find and define yourself within this singular vision. How can we support you to do that? One of the strengths is that when we show our games, what you see is what you are getting. I'm seeing a clock change a bunch of different colors. Thank you. What you see is what you are getting. But working with a publisher and producing a vertical slice and doing this amount of work that will be dismantled later doesn't fit within our processes. We emphasize tooling, things that will make it possible to do a month's work within a week or a day down the line. And when you're focusing on tooling and on the things that enable your creativity, that means that's less time to make the game look pretty. Less time to justify yourself, even in the eyes of the world. A longer amount of time before you can reveal the heart at what you're doing, particularly when so much of an emphasis is placed today on the world premiere and being perfect in that. We have a game coming out in December. We've been working on it for 2 years. Would love to show the GIFs and cool things that we produce in between and the transparency of process, but I knew if we did, having gained more biz dev experience over time, we would lose the opportunity to stand on a significant stage. Because shit's fucked. The ideals of Strange Scaffold that turned into our specialties over time is that we wanted to build a studio structure around my specific capacity, abilities, and psychology. Again, the undiagnosed ADHD. I knew making one game for 5 years and being trapped in a room with it was a terrifying prospect that I never wanted to be left with because I had too many friends and I had worked on too many projects where that was the case. I knew it enough to know I didn't want it. So, here's a studio where we work on multiple things at the same time and find ways to learn at the speed of light, sharing information between teams. Hey, don't use that font, it's broken. Don't use that asset pack. Here's a unique opportunity. Here's a piece of tooling we built for one project that goes to another. The more transparent we were within the structure, the more we allowed space for people to see themselves within something, again, very singular. Oddly, the less mine it became as well. People got to see themselves and got to understand that they were not alone in wanting to make games different. I want to enable the people around me to do empowering, flexible work with minimal risk, and build production processes to find effective collaborators consistently. And when we didn't have jobs, pass them on to others. Build, again, this community. And I wanted, partially because I just love finding information. I was a children's librarian in yet another life, once upon a time, as a child. It's weird. I had access to social security numbers. I shouldn't have had it. Anyway, so I loved gathering information and being able to present it to people and share what would become their new passion in the process. So I want to be able to work with QA personally. What is it like to localize a game? Our first game that we localized it in 10 languages at once because I guess I really wanted to learn what it was like to localize a game. We wanted to be able to handle the entire release process ourselves, not for control, but to understand it, to share what we had found, and to be able to consistently be able to produce things that reflected the diversity of perspective that we had cultivated within this organization. I don't believe that my structure is perfect or that I am a perfect manager, director, person. But if there is one thing I will acknowledge about our processes, is that it is coming from a single fundamental goal: survival. The fear of a 15-year-old who realized cool friend on the internet that he was doing journalism stuff with is gone. What happened to him? Fear of losing friends, losing colleagues, the idea of empty seats. You can have all the shipped games in the world, but if the people who made them are gone, what are you left with? A miserable pile of Steam reviews. My parents, when they got married, were kind of ostracized from both of their families. My mom's parents thought that my dad was a ghetto scumbag. My dad's parents resented that he was being taken away from them. They got married in Las Vegas while my mom was already pregnant with me, and she couldn't stop laughing throughout the entire ceremony, looking at her visibly pregnant belly and my dad's $80 rented tuxedo. Their version of a honeymoon was walking the Vegas Strip looking for change because they had nothing and quietly talking about what their future would hold before going back to a motel room where they had shoved the mattress into the closet because it was covered in blood and no one explained that, and they still don't know what that was about. It was a hard time, but they had each other, and then they had me. And one day, my dad met an Army recruiter, and he signed up without telling my mom, and from what I'm told, that was a hell of a conversation. And the reason why he did it is because they got a chance to visit a military base, and suddenly there was a kid riding by on a bike like a Norman Rockwell painting, and they said, "Oh, we can make sure our family is safe." So, over the next 20 years, I watched my dad destroy his body to make sure that we always had food, always had shelter, that we were safe. I watched him miss holidays. I watched as we would have a grainy video call over awful internet, and there would be a big boom in the background, just a sound, and the feed would cut off, and I wouldn't know whether my dad was alive or dead. Those were the sacrifices I knew he was making to give me $2,000 to make sure that if I wanted to make video games, I could try. My mom became a stay-at-home mom, and she loved it so much. She was a writer at one point, a surrealist painter. She saw opportunities to practice her creativity with her kids, and she felt guilty because she felt that everything in the world and also her family were telling her that this decision that she had made was wrong. She had wasted all of her potential. And so this enormously creative, hardworking woman looked at her baby boy and said, God, whatever you've given me, I don't know if I messed it up, or even if I used it, if I would mess it up. Whatever you've given me, whatever talents, whatever abilities, whatever perspective you've given me, give it to him. Let him be happy, give it to him. She told me this story when I had been working as a writer professionally for a few years by then. That man with more hair. She said, look, God answered my prayer. He gave it to you. And I now sit at tables with very rich people, and they ask me what the best version of my game looks like, what the most ambitious game pitch I have is. What does your dream game look like? Let's talk about that. And two things go through my mind. First, the immense amount of sacrifice and humanity that has brought me to where I am. A family that loved and loved and loved and gave and gave and gave. And what it might be like to take all of that and roll it into a basketball of money and run across stage and dunk it and see it all go away. My dad, when you join the military and you're in it for long enough, you get what's called a GI Bill, free education. He didn't use it. He gave it to my little sister. She's entering grad school now. She's smarter than me. She's funnier than me. She's a better person in so many ways. She now carries the legacy of our family's sacrifice as well. And I can't get out of my mind the idea that with all of that, we don't have a safety net. We are the safety net. My family didn't leave themselves destitute, but they gave so much and believed so hard. Am I going to take that and spike it for a 5-year dev cycle and a moonshot to say that I worked on Assassin's Creed? My hands don't work anymore. I've lost my mind. But did you see the ray tracing? The second thought that emerges to mind when I look at these people doing their jobs, I understand from a business perspective the logistics. You want to put $1 million into one pot because you can produce a certain kind of game with that, as opposed to 100,000 into 10 pots. But the second thing that goes through my mind is, the fuck do you mean the best version of this game? Maybe the best version of this game takes a third of the time, a third of the budget proposed. Maybe the best version of the game is exactly what's been pitched. Maybe the best version of a game is the one that, even if it is mediocre, ensures that the team that made it survives to build the greatest game they will ever produce afterwards. Just releasing a game is a miracle in an age of miracles, the information age. What are we losing by questioning who gets to make those games and how they get to make it? Some of my best friends are bearded white men. I understand the struggle. But it is odd how often that is the team behind a game. Because among other things, they get a second chance if they fail. This isn't universal. I'm not generalizing. But I also know no one's going to give a $10 million comeback shot to a nigga who failed. And so I smile and I say, let's keep talking. Because I do want to keep talking. A lot of these biz dev people are wonderful people. But also because we have fundamentally different goals. If I survive, I can ensure that the people around me survive and thrive too. That's the goal of the Constellation Model. Not that people become interchangeable cogs, but it's like more sparkly, so I can like sound good as I talk about it. It's no, if we just make sure those stars don't wink out, then that's another game we can make. That's another shot at sustainability. That's a different vision of what sustainability looks like. Making a game on top of a day job. Making a game for the 2 hours between dealing with kids vomiting on the floor. How can that labor and that care be effectively used to produce games we haven't seen before? Because if you change the process of making a thing, you change what can be made. We need to explore those avenues. And so, in the past 3 years, we've shipped 5 games. All of them have been profitable. Outside of one, it was an experiment in a lot of ways with like models and market structures. We can afford to make that experiment, and it's going to become profitable within the next 9 months. We're working on 9 games simultaneously. And that isn't just me. That is programmers and animators and all sorts of people applying their care and labor carefully, sustainably, over and over again, and seeking opportunities that fit within that specific mold. There's people that we can't work with as a result, but there's also so many weird and strange things that we can do, and it feels like I've stepped into a different world as a result. The highest rate we pay is $84. Sometimes we pay people monthly, or we've given someone like a laptop because a big thing failed. We're looking at what equity means on an individual basis. For our artists, pay goes between like $30 to $45. We bump up rates over time looking for equity. We have a musician, RJ Lake. He's really, really fast. We found out that for all of the work he did in 2021, we paid him $7,000. And instead of being like, man, we got a good deal, we said, we got to bump that guy's rate. And as a studio head, with this perspective, I get to make that decision without answering to anyone and say, no, we fix this. We make this better. We look for what people need and want and what puts them in a position to succeed in the future, and we give it to them. And we're going to have to bump his rate again because he's a talented bastard, but I love that. I made $95K in 2019 from all my contracting. Again, I also don't do Strange Scaffold full time. I'm looking for things that pay the bills, and then all of the things I can do with the remaining pocket of funds afterwards. Spent $25K. I was like, wow, this is more than my dad has ever made. This feels really, really weird. In 2020, that number went really high again, and our costs increased. And then in 2021, we spent like $250,000. But we made the majority of 8 games with it. And so ultimately we spent $300 to work on the majority of 8 games. And in this year, this emphasis on building sustainability by passive revenue streams, royalty checks from games I work on as a writer and narrative director, as well as our own titles, we're really seeing that pay off. And that means not only do I get to bump people's rates and be in negotiations and say, no, you're getting paid more than that. I also get to say we get to do this for longer, make more games like this. And I gloss over all of this so I can talk about the number that I hate on this fucking board. And that's the lowest rate that Strange Scaffold pays is $1 an hour. Hate that number, and it doesn't look good. The situation for it is that a guy who worked at a very large tech company who liked our work reached out. And we were talking, and he was providing us friendly advice about a project we were working on. I said, this is going beyond friendly advice. Let me pay you. And he said, my company wouldn't allow that. Turned out he lied to me. I found this out in a Denny's. I haggled with the man for 15 minutes. I said, no, I'm paying you. And he said, okay, this is the one place I get to make games. This is the one place I get to express this creativity anymore. Pay me $1 an hour. I like your work, and I like the work of the people here. Consult on my project. Let me know what you think of what's going on here, and help me recruit for whatever the new version of it looks like, because I still want to create this vision. And I was like, I would have done it for free, but yeah, sure. I hate that number, but it shows the priorities of Strange Scaffold, that we are looking to speak to and manage people on an individual basis, and in whatever their creative process looks like, whatever their needs look like, within the boundaries of ethics, support them. And that idea expanded to a galaxy of constellations, knowing that an exponential jump in scale would put us in a position of exponential risk. We're talking to people inside and out of games about what opportunities look like to join other constellations. You run an animation studio. You run a talent agency. It would cost a lot of money for me to build a performance and mocap environment and then to sustain that and use that in all of our games. But what if we connected for one project? What if we provided you with one of our specialties? The tech we made for games like Dog Airport Game. I went from being the guy saying, hey, is it possible to use your code base to make a new game, to being the guy saying, hey, here's my code base. What does this enable you to do? As we operate within the underfoot of the feet of giants, the ability to connect and split and connect and split on both a corporate and individual basis is our chief strength. We can expand our capacity. We can find like-minded people and end up building things that, again, are unlike anything that's been made. And we don't just deserve that as developers, our players deserve it too. It isn't that people don't want to do this. Most of the people I talk to, dozens, hundreds, thousands of developers, especially over the years, aren't fundamentally happy with the processes through which their games are brought to life. Sometimes the partners through which their games are brought to life. They recognize that we have the technology, the collective experience, and the awareness to find new ways of building games, individualized structures. You know that you don't get any work done before 9 p.m. What does it look like where you only make a game in healthy ways between the hours of 9 p.m. and 12 a.m.? What does the $5,000 game look like? Those are questions that people are asking. I'm not some radical genius innovator. I'm just standing here attempting to provide a precedent because I didn't have one. And if there's any request I make of this audience, if there is anything I ask of you, as unfair of a request as this is, if there's anything you take from this talk, if you see a new way of making games that puts you and the people around you in a position to not just survive, but thrive, please, for the love of God, be that precedent for someone else. Because they're looking, they're asking, even if it crashes and burns, will someone please say that I'm not crazy? Thank you, random bystander. If you have access to funds and resources Support the people who don't have precedence. Right now, especially if you have funding, I'm seeing a lot of people, really good and cool people, say, let's support a weird project or a developer that otherwise wouldn't get that support. Look for business models and production cycles and developers that otherwise wouldn't receive a chance, and say, in the same way that we're looking for the one game that pays for the rest of the 10, these 10 projects are going to be a mess. But there's one of them that's going to show a viable way forward for a field, an ocean, a constellation of game developers. If I don't say the word ambition 400 times in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to be deported. So ambition, 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 ambition. I'm talking about ambition. I did it. I fulfilled the legal requirement. The contract has been made. The pact sealed. My ambition is to see the people here in 30 years. That means you have to invite me back in 30 years. I want to be an amazing partner. I want to be a really, really good dad. I want to be a good son and a good brother. I still want to be, kind of obnoxious for the existence of my younger sister, but I still want to be a good brother. And I still want to be making games, making things, finding new ways to support and enable people and ask these questions. I want to see the people here there too. And the only way it happens is if we change the way we build things. Because let me tell you, the set structures, we have more winners than ever. Again, technology that empowers us, ways to collaborate with people around the world, and yet, we know those structures crater 80% of the people who walk through them. We have to do better. We can do better. We are, in many ways, doing better. But if you need someone to share as much information as they can legally allow, I am here via DM and email, and you can just ambush me at any point inside of this conference. I'm here all week. And you know what? You're trapped here with me because I will say, how do you want to make video games? How do we do this better? Find out what you love, how you work, and what makes the best games possible, and then do it for the people we work with. Thank you. I'm serious. My DMs are open. My email is open. Tell me that I'm wrong or that, I'm a stinky poo-poo head. I'm a black man on the internet. I've heard worse.
Well, there is almost virtually no way for me to follow that up. So I will let you all go to morning tea. Thank you so much for that. That was incredible work. We are so glad to have you. And I will invite you back in 30 years. Now you're stuck with me. Please, everybody, go enjoy morning tea. I won't tell you not to ambush him because apparently he just gave you free rides too. So get him on the way to the cookie line.